We've gathered information, we've clustered our insights and learnings from that research, and then we've decided on a problem to solve and who we're solving that problem for. That's awesome. Do we have any questions about that process or anything that I can try to help answer related to that process of research? I see a raised hand. Yes. If you were talking, you were on mute.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay, thank
Hello.
you. I want to ask you again. What
Yes.
I get from your explanation means we should observation with human objects in order to get better results. Like a seller who give a questionnaire to his buyers when there is a new product that I catch it right or no.
So you can. What I would recommend is if your team has interest in time, you're welcome to talk to real buyers about their problems, right? That's a different way to do this research section, which is ask people what their problems are and then try to come up with solutions. We've intentionally had it be a little bit less about going out and asking people questions. One, because we have a very broad range of ages of students who may be participating, right? So we have some folks who may be third or fourth graders who may not be super comfortable asking, adults or parents about some of these things. Two, we recognize that takes a lot more time, right? So if your team cannot get access to the kinds of people that they want to ask these questions to, that becomes a real challenge and kind of puts a stop on your design process. So if you want more information and input into your resources, that can be interviews, right? So if you have humans that you want to talk to, put all that information in your resources section because that's great input into your insights. But we wouldn't necessarily recommend that everybody goes out and does that because it is pretty time consuming and there's a lot of other things to think about when you're interviewing people. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about the research section? Ooh, I see someone in chat. Before the students go further, they need to put their idea and plan here in this app. Can we use a video recording feature? So we are recording this meeting. You will get a recording of this when we're done. But they can use any variety of this or other processes. So your students may already be testing or building something in assembler. That's totally fine, right? Our intention with providing you this design sprint kind of structure is if your team is stuck, right? Or if they don't know where to start, or if they've gotten to the point where they think about a problem, but they don't, like they're really struggling to generate ideas, these are all tools to help you and your team. So this is by no means required, right? This is just us trying to give you more materials and resources to make your job a little bit easier to help mentor these teams. Does that answer your question in chat? If not, feel free to put a follow-up question. Happy to answer a follow-up question.
Yes, excuse me.
Yes.
I want to ask you, if the research finished, do we make a slide in Assembly Studio Lab? How many slides the maximum to describe our research? Thank you.
Great question. I may actually hand that question over to Joseph and Leo, given that they're coordinating a little bit more of the kind of submissions and judging criteria. Leo and Joseph, do we have any thoughts on people showcasing their research when they do a submission, or are we more interested in the final idea in assembler?
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit of both, and I hate to say that, right? But it's a little bit of both. And Michelle, I think there's a whiteboard that Mural has custom built for this competition. So I think when you show that, or at some point, if you decide to show that early on or now or later, I think that would provide the students and the teams and the teachers kind of an idea of how the showcase will be. And so, it's presentation. Anybody that has done science fairs, it's the judge comes up to the science fair booth, and then the student tells their explains their project. So at the end of the day, it still does come down to how your project is presented to somebody virtually. And so, Michelle, would that be okay if you did show that whiteboard, or did you not want to show that?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah,
check
no, I'm
this out.
happy to give a brief.
Mural did a very nice job at saying, hey, let's look at a whiteboard. And so they custom built what's a traditional science fair board, but made it digital. And so right now on our webpage, you'll have there was a way to update on Airtable, submit through Airtable. And what we'll do is we'll have these whiteboards where your students could be creative and put the whiteboards together. So Michelle, I'll stand back.
Amazing. Thank you. So this is to Joseph's kind of question or comment, and the other questions that have come into chat. How much of our research do we show? What do we talk about when we're presenting the project? This is kind of intended to be that structure, right? So anyone who's been to a traditional quote unquote science fair, you know that there's this trifold, right? This like big piece of poster board that has these two kind of wing flats. And while that may seem a little outdated, maybe, or old school, we love the way that they actually structure those trifolds, because what it's done is given you a great way to think about the kind of content that goes there. So your abstract, quote unquote, is typically some information about what you're doing, right? What did your team do? How did they approach this problem? And here's the great spot to put things like your how might we statement, or your hypothesis that your team is working on, that insight from your clustering, right? So this is the question that we're trying to answer. This is our how might we, and this is our hypothesis. So this is the insight that led us to that how might we statement, right? And then we have that spot for research. So we can say, ooh, like research, yes, I want to include all this information that my team has gathered. This was so good. Let's put that here as well. So that's kind of on your first panel, right? And then your middle is really focused on what did your team do, right? So this may be some of your brainstorming process. This may be what you built in assembler. This may show the version 1 and then the version 2 after you got feedback from testing it with users. Whatever you want to showcase is kind of like the big bang, quote unquote, moment for your project. That goes in the middle. And then on the right-hand side, we typically see kind of a conclusion, right? What did we learn from doing this? What did we find as interesting? And then future directions, right? If our team could spend the rest of their lives working on this project, what would that look like? What would they do? Do we need an industry partner, et cetera, to kind of make this come to life? So you're welcome to use this. I will include this in a link out with the recording as well for a template version that your team can build on. And one of the beautiful things about this in Mural is that you can add in images. You can add in video clips. So if you do want to video your team kind of talking through some of this, you're welcome to put a video on here. It's just an upload link here through a click and drag on the left-hand side. So it makes it really easy for your team to build a very engaging kind of digital poster showing off your work.
And if I may jump in, I just put some links of some boards, the old school way. We're really transforming the presentation. So you could put a QR code, for instance, where the QR code image, then if I'm watching this or I'm viewing your whiteboard on my computer, I can pull out my phone and scan that QR code, and then it'll link into your AR scene. And so you could screenshot your AR scenes. You be creative, but really this is your canvas to present and showcase and demo your science fair projects. You don't want to put too much where it's like a whole thesis paper, but you want to have it where it's creative and you're still putting the traditional science fair components on the board. So yeah, we're super excited to see some of the creative assets that you guys create and the problems that you guys are solving. So
I love that. And I'm just going to call out a couple of other options. You may say like, but Michelle and Joseph and Leo, like my team doesn't have all these things, right? Like maybe they came in with a question that they already knew they wanted to solve. That's totally fine, right? There's other things that you can do in terms of layout. This is really, we've intentionally left it very blank as a canvas with just some guidance. So if you have things that you want to include here, go for it. You know, the world is your oyster or your team's oyster. Let them be as creative as they want in terms of how to display this. I personally really liked using glitter on my science fair poster boards. My parents did not love that I used a lot of glitter on them, but it was really fun. So you may have them pull in some sparkly GIFs or some images to help kind of showcase their project. So hopefully that answers some questions on presentation. I see a question in the chat as well. Before kind of showcasing the project, you need to make a prototype. Yes, you are jumping ahead on me. So let me jump back into our design sprint section and maybe talk about section 2 really briefly, that brainstorming. And then yes, there is a prototyping section. So like I had mentioned, and I see a couple questions in chat for that, we will be sharing the link to this recording as well as this board that you can make a copy of and that project poster that you can also make a copy of after this session. So feel free to look through those. If you have other questions, let us know. But if your team is already thinking about prototyping and testing, there is a whole section down here on category 3 for you. You're welcome to jump in right there, right? So you may be done. You're like, I don't need any of this other stuff. My team is ready. We have an idea. We're building the thing. Great, build it and then start doing that prototyping and testing. You'll see that information below. And we've tried to make this very self-serve so that while you'll have the recording of me talking through it, if you need it, the intention is that you could do this or your team could do this without needing me, right? So that this is just a reference and a resource for you. Any other questions before I jump into our brainstorming section? Okay, if not, feel free to keep dropping questions in chat as you have them. I'm seeing them. I'm trying to answer them as they come in. Okay, so we did our research, right? We know who we're building for. We have our problem statement, and now our team is chomping at the bit. They are so excited. They want to come up with ideas. Perfect, let's do it. We love to use this tool called Crazy Eights. 8 as in the number of 8. And the reason that we do this is because, and you've probably seen this, when someone asks you to think of ideas that solve a problem, you can probably generate 1 or 2 pretty easily. Even idea 3 and 4 may come, they may take like another minute, but they're probably pretty good. And then someone says, no, but I need like ideas 5 and 6 and 7. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can't, that's too many ideas. The way that we've structured Crazy Eights is that every person, and this is based off of a traditional sheet of paper, right? So traditionally, you'd fold that paper in half, then fold it in half again, and fold it in half again, and you'd unfold it and you'd have 8 boxes. So we've made this virtual. The goal here is to spend 1 minute per box. That's it, 1 minute per box per teammate, drawing potential ways to solve the problem for your persona, right? So it's super helpful to write in your problem statement here. So you may want to put in your how might we statement, and then you may want to put in your persona name. So maybe your persona name here is Ravi, and that will help you and your team be reminded of what you're doing and who you're doing it for. But this is a great spot for them to really quickly draw in ideas. If they want to really draw, there is a sketch option, this bottom pencil icon. My warning here is that like you have to do it with a mouse if you're using a mouse on a computer, and I'm really bad at using my mouse to draw. So you may not want them to be doing that. It may be easier for them to bring in things like icons or pictures to kind of describe what they're talking about, or even using sticky notes to describe it, right? They may say, you know, my idea is something, something, something. Totally fine. But the goal is to have them work through all 8 boxes with no more than a minute per box. So in 8 minutes, you have 8 ideas per person. That's super fast. People are going to get stressed about it. It's okay, right? Just warn them ahead of time. It's going to be uncomfortable, but you're going to have a lot of ideas when you're done with that brainstorming section. And then you can look at all your ideas and try to assess which one is the idea that we should be moving forward with. And we'll look at that in our next step. One of my notes on this, your ideas don't have to be complete ideas, right? So I may have a team that's trying to fix, the charging problem, like charging wait times essentially, right? And they may have a piece of an idea, right? They may say, oh, I think, why don't we just put slides at every wait station or at every charging station? And that's a great idea, right? You don't need them to have the entire business model. We don't need to have the entire sketch of the playground that's going to go in, right? So these can be very simple or they can be very robust, but the goal is to get 8 ideas from each of your teammates in 8 minutes. And they may be fast. The first 2 or 3 ideas they may write up in a minute, and then you're going to have those remaining 5 or 6 minutes to pull all the rest of the ideas out. So we've got our ideas, right? Everyone's filled in these boxes. We have some great ideas. We're very excited about them. This is fabulous. Now, what do we do from there? Because we have a lot of ideas. How do we pick one? What we recommend is everybody picks one idea per person to develop more, right? So this may be a very basic. So you may say, oh, this idea of like slides or playgrounds at a charging station, we love that. We're going to take this idea. And then maybe somebody else came up with the idea of like, why don't we put, charging stations at every hotel, right? Or every office so that I never actually have to wait because like they're already at a place that I'm spending a bunch of time. And maybe the other idea is something related to like new batteries, right? They're like, but why doesn't your battery just last longer? Like, why can't we just have the batteries be better and then I don't need to charge it as much? Well, that's awesome. So then we take these 3 ideas, 1 per person. So each student has one of these sections of 8, right? So I say 1 per person. And then we're going to move them over here into an activity that I like to call round robin. We call it that because you go quote unquote around the room to do idea development and critique. And the way this works is that you can set a timer for 5 minutes, right? And you can do this virtually. We have a timer function built in on Mural, or you can do this if you're going to do this in person with your students, just set a timer. And the goal here is now you've given a very high level overview, right? Slides at a charging station. Okay, tell me more about that idea. So your student now, each student, the one who owned the idea first and who built that idea is going to write me details about that idea, right? So this is going to be maybe 2 or 3 sentences. And this is really going to describe kind of what that idea is, why it would be beneficial, why it's going to solve that problem. Everyone will do this. They have 5 minutes to kind of build this out. Then you're going to set a timer for 7 minutes. And your students are going to rotate, quote unquote, to not their idea. So student here may take this box in the middle, student on the right may take the box on the left, etc. You're kind of mentoring your team. You can help make decisions on how they're sliding around ideas. But the important thing is that I am not critiquing my own idea, right? So then maybe I came up with this first idea, right? So this is mine. So now I'm going to critique this second idea. And what I'm going to do is write down in new Post-its in those 7 minutes, all the ways this idea may not work, right? So I may say, oh, that would be too expensive, or that would be inconvenient, or that would get maybe really dirty. Like maybe I don't want to be using playgrounds and stuff when I have all these other people using them, etc. Right? So this is a great chance for your teammates to give you feedback on your idea. And then once I'm done giving feedback on my teammate's idea, then I go back to my original idea And now with all this feedback that I have from my other teammate about why my slides won't work or my playground at a charging station won't work, now I can improve my idea, right? So I may make changes. I may say, ooh, instead of having it be this huge open playground, maybe it's a covered play area, right? And maybe you're like, oh, it would be hard to keep clean. So maybe I attach it to like a restaurant that already exists and makes it super easy for them to help keep it clean because they can have their staff come in and clean it, etc. Right? The goal here is that every student has an opportunity to provide feedback on a different idea, and then that feedback is used to make the original idea better, right? That's what I'd love to emphasize for this, right? Especially when you're talking about this with your students. They may feel uncomfortable or they may not love having another student give them feedback that's not necessarily positive about their idea. That's okay, but this is part of the learning and design process, which is that every idea is not perfect the second that we come up with it. It probably has space to get better and make change. So this is a way for us to have our team give you feedback before you go and build and test it with a real person. So that's our round robin. So then we come out of this, right? We've got 3 more robust ideas. And there's 2 things we can do. We can either use this step 7 to help pick an idea. So if every teammate just loves their idea and no one is willing to say, no, this is the best of the 3, this is the one we want to work on, I'd recommend using step 7, right? If your team looks at the 3 ideas that you have and they clearly come to a consensus or agree on an idea that they want to build, just go with that idea, right? The intention here is to have a prioritization matrix that helps them prioritize ideas to pick the best one to build if they can't make that decision themselves as a team. So that this is a little bit more subjective, right? To say, hey, no, this is like we're measuring things and this is in the best bucket. Does that make sense? Hopefully, yes. Okay. If you do need to mediate a discussion on how to pick the best idea, we've kind of developed this importance difficulty matrix or importance feasibility matrix for you to do that. Essentially what you would do is you'd say we have idea 1, we have idea 2, and we have idea 3, right? And then you as a lead are going to have your team line those up from hardest to build to easiest to build. So hardest to build is lowest feasibility, right? So that would kind of sit over here on the left. Then maybe this one is next easiest, and this is the most easy. And then we prioritize them based on importance. And that's related to our how might we question, right? So I have my how might we question, and then I raise them up. So if this one really meets the needs for my user, that one comes up here. Maybe this one doesn't really meet the needs all that much, but it's a cool idea, so it stays down here. And this one meets my needs amazing. It's even better than the other one. So it goes way up here in the top corner. And then what we do is we realize, okay, so this idea 2, is the easiest to build and is the best in terms of meeting customer needs. So that's the idea we're going to build, right? So this is the one we're going to pick. We always want to pick stuff, if we can, that's up in this top right quadrant. Any questions now on that kind of brainstorming and idea improvement process that is in our section 2?